Hey, welcome to Castle Tech Talk, the show where we take 10 minutes to speak with technical experts who can help you and I get just a little bit smarter. I'm your host, Jonathan Garcia, and today on episode 2 of a series we're calling Public Cloud Puppies, because just like a puppy, you can get a public cloud pretty easily, but it costs a little bit more than you think. I'm joined by fellow Racker and Solutions Architect, Mr. Mike Breaux. Mike, if you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, your technical background.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Mike Breaux. I'm about a 5+-ish year Racker. I've been in the business over 20 years. I've worked in banking, media holding company, outdoor advertising, even energy and medical. I've worked all over the place. And yeah, I work here at Rackspace as an AWS specialist.
Okay. And I think probably the obvious question, at least for me, was why did you choose to focus on AWS? Like, why was that your choice of cloud?
I think it was because I found that that's where the industry was going. It wasn't a question of if you're going to go to cloud, it was when and how you would go about getting there. And they seemed at the time to be the fastest, biggest cloud going out there, and that was a few years back, and they still are today. They're still the biggest.
I was going to say, it sounds like you made the right bet.
yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely huge. It's very hard to keep up with all of the different changes that come out for that cloud. So it's kind of nice for me to be able to focus on that specifically.
Yeah, just have one. What was it last year they came out with? Was it 1,800 U? Something like that.
So yeah, they have so many things to put out.
So the question I'd like to ask, and it's kind of the whole theme of the show, and I think it's a little silly, but the question is, should you go to the public cloud to save money?
No. You should go there if it's functionally correct.
What do you mean?
If you're looking to make use of the cloud, you're looking to use the elastic nature of the cloud, being able to handle spikes in traffic, and then being able to peel back when traffic kind of dies off, goes away. The easy example would be like Black Friday kind of traffic. You got the holidays coming, you have people that are shopping the e-commerce sites, things like that, and so your traffic is most likely going to swell during that time. But what happens the rest of the year when it's not Black Friday? Your traffic kind of sloughs off, so you don't need as much infrastructure. If you're looking to make use of that type of functionality, the cloud is perfect. If you have things that you only need done for a short amount of times, I've worked with people before who have testing that they do. They run certain types of tests. Some of them medical, some energy, whatever. They run tests and they run those tests for a little while, and they spin down all that equipment, and they don't need to own or maintain equipment for the rest of the year. So that works out for them.
So if it's like for me, if I'm going to go on a vacation and drive, I might not take my car. I might rent a car and put some miles on that thing.
Exactly.
And not have to use my car.
You rent the additional horsepower that you need, and then you give it back when you're done.
Yeah, here are the keys.
Exactly.
I'm going to check the engine. What are some of the things that you feel really make AWS unique in the public cloud arena?
Unique in the public cloud arena, I would say AWS has a lot invested in orchestration. That to me is usually the thing that sets it apart from the other clouds out there. You've got Azure, you've got Google, you've got even OpenStack. There's so much invested in the orchestration, like cloud formation. There's things like code deploy, code pipeline. A lot of tools are just built to plug right into AWS. So if you're looking to get into it, chances are there's a tool that can help you and help you do it easier than if you were to try and roll your own, so to speak.
So for businesses that either aren't in the cloud today and are looking to move, or maybe like new businesses that are looking to build, like what resources does AWS provide those businesses to be able to deploy in the cloud on their own?
Well, it really just depends on the applications themselves, and that's always an important factor when looking at the cloud as well. It's not just some sort of virtualization in somebody else's data center. You have to be thinking about the type of applications itself that you're trying to put out there, whether it be a WordPress blog site or something. it's probably not the best fit for more monolithic applications, like if you had just like a reporting server, or just some kind of one server application type of thing. It's more for things. Web applications are usually a natural fit, although I've worked with people who have a host of servers out there that are completely private, and they connect to them via VPN or Direct Connect, and they keep all that work out there, and they essentially use it in lieu of a data center. It really just depends on the workloads themselves. As far as what is provided, there are a lot of really good tools provided out there. There are tools out there for somebody going from a traditional like VMware environment over to AWS. You can run some sort of conversion on some of those VMs. I don't usually recommend that route. I usually recommend a more manual route as far as moving over to it. As I mentioned before, CloudFormation is a great way to build out your infrastructure as code. And that also allows you to reiterate through what you want your environment to look like. Different servers sitting in different locations, different site arranges, all kinds of different.
The phrase I always hear that I've heard a lot since I started here was, it depends.
It does. It does. It really, really does. So it always depends on the applications, what you're looking to accomplish, and also more importantly, the strength of the team that's involved. And that's why a lot of the stuff that we do, we end up involving like professional services, because a lot of companies who are trying to go to the cloud don't necessarily have the resources or the knowledge in-house. So it's important, at least for a temporary amount, for a short amount of time, to augment that staff.
Yeah.
And cloud resources, especially for migrations and transformations, those can be pretty expensive resources. So it's usually better to, like renting that car, rent that resource, and then you get into the cloud. And then at that point, you learn how to function within the cloud.
So like spinning up staff and spinning down staff, kind of, right?
Kind of, yes.
Yeah. I'm like piecing this all together.
Yes,
So it's
IT talent.
it's making more and more sense to me. I guess that kind of leads into the next question I had as far as like challenges. Like, I think one is staff, resources, maybe the talent to be able to do this. But I guess what are some of the challenges that businesses face when they're trying to get into like an AWS environment?
Always the big thing that I see is a lot of underestimating the cost. Always a lot of underestimating the cost. You'll get somebody who looks at like an AWS calculator. Maybe they build out they're calculating out an environment using like T instances, which they're great instances. It's a great way to build a dev environment, or for certain workloads they work fine, but they're not meant for every kind of workload, and they're very cheap instances to get into. And then they get into it and they find the performance may not be exactly what they were looking for because they beat the heck out of the server.
Yeah.
And so they need to augment that plan. And the next thing you know, costs are getting out of control. They've got a bunch of backups, and they're not really keeping an eye on how many backups they have, how much space they're using. They're constantly making changes, or they have people who shouldn't be standing up EC2 instances who are, so governance sometimes becomes a problem. There's a lot of different factors, and that's usually, those are the things that we try and head off on the phone calls. We try and tell them, look, this isn't as easy as you think it is. Let's talk about governance. Let's talk about your workloads. Let's talk about what you think in IT security. Let's talk about what high availability means to you, or what disaster recovery means to you. What that recovery point objective is, or any of that stuff. That's really where you want to get in those conversations, so that we can help design a way to get there. And once they're there, they're going to be happy with what they get.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone that's maybe watching this video and is thinking of taking those first steps and moving in? What advice would you give them to make sure they're putting their best foot forward?
All I can say is do the research. Especially with AWS in particular, Azure is the same way, and even GCP to an extent. There's a wealth of knowledge already out there on the web. If you're doing something and you want to move that workload into the cloud, chances are somebody's done it, and they've probably written about it. Do the research. Know what you're getting into. Always Google searches, news groups. I've seen Reddit channels, all kinds of things. You can do the research in those areas before you even open that AWS account. They have their free tier, which is great. I recommend that to anyone to get in, play around with AWS, get comfortable with it. But definitely do the research.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mike Breaux, for joining us and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. Join us next week. We'll dive into one of the next public clouds and get with one of our other solutions architects to get their insight and perspective. Thanks, guys.